Good afternoon or good morning, everyone, depending on where you're joining us from. Thank you for joining us today for Dyno's January Lunch and Learn. We're doing a part 2 of our Winter Lunch and Learn, which was our first user roundtable. Basically, the format of this is slightly different from our typical Lunch and Learns. If you've joined us in the past, we are doing a Q&A kind of format. So we sourced questions from all of you back in November and December for our part 1 of the user roundtable. You all submitted some great questions and so many questions that we only had a chance to answer half of them in December. And so we'll be answering the other half of the questions today, as well as some additional questions that came in through the registration process for our January Lunch and Learn. So excited for a great session today and to answer some of your hottest questions about Dyno. Before we jump in, as usual, I just want to make sure that everyone is aware of Dino Solutions so that we are contextualizing what Casey's going to be talking about today. So I know that typically people who are joining us are current Dyno users. If you are not a current Dyno user or you're unfamiliar with Dyno's platforms, we are a monitoring solution for school issued devices. We work best in one-to-one environments where devices are issued by the school and managed centrally. Our primary product is our classroom management solution, which enables teachers to gain visibility into student activity during class, block off task behavior on websites and applications with our blocking plans, and engage with students with messages, question banks, and polls, and then gather and review all of student activity history with our class history and analytics capabilities. At the beginning of 2021, we released our device impact measurement module, which is for admins to really get the same information that teachers are getting in our class history, but really at that higher school and district level to see as an aggregate, how are devices being used? How are websites and applications being used? Are they even being used? And where can you really identify opportunities to reduce spending or cut back costs on areas that you're not using those products in? So that's really an overview of Dyno and our solutions. Hope anyone who's joining us today and not a current Dyno user, if you have questions about our solutions or are interested in getting started with a free trial, we'll follow up with you, and please feel free to reach out with any questions that you have or anything to get started. So without further ado, we'll jump in. I know you all have probably seen our faces before if you're joining us again for a Lunch and Learn, but I will introduce us again. I'm Tierra Leustig, Marketing Director here at Dyno, and I am joined as always by Casey Higgs, who is our School Success Director, and she will be leading us in this presentation today. So I am going to take a back seat. I'll be having an eye on the Q&A during the session. So if anybody has questions while Casey's going through her presentation, please feel free to drop those in the Q&A or comments or anything like that. We'll leave some time at the end to address those one-off questions outside of the presentation. So Casey, I will let you take it away.
Thank you. And I won't take much time either to just get right into it. As Tierra mentioned, these are user questions that we're covering. So there's not necessarily a story here that we're telling like we do in our typical Lunch and Learns, but I do want to quickly recap the topics that we already covered. So if there's something here today that you're not seeing, it's probably because we already covered it in that first user roundtable. So here are some of those topics that we covered. Go check out that first user roundtable, please, if you want to look more into any one of these topics. So again, we're prioritizing net new questions today. And topics today are a little bit more specific. We're covering basically teacher stuff and admin stuff. In terms of teachers, we're talking about monitoring, blocking, and then strategy related questions. And then we've also got a little bit of strategy on the admin side as well. So let's jump right into the teacher stuff. We're going to get started with questions about monitoring. And the first question we have here is one that I get consistently at Dyno. It's one that there's not one answer for. The question is about substitute teaching, right? What do I do with a substitute teacher when I can't be the one personally to monitor my class? And again, you've got a few different options with Dyno's classroom management tool. It really depends on your availability as a teacher, maybe your co-teacher's availability as well, and so on. So here, you'll see. Okay, so our first option for substitute teacher situation is a situation where you, the teacher, are, you're not available to be in school, but you're otherwise available and connected to internet. So these are the teachers that, Tiara and I see when we're at FETC next week, when we're at ISTE, when we're at ed tech trade shows. We have Dyno customers come by the booth all the time and be like, I'm monitoring my students right now on my device, right? The point here is not necessarily that you're monitoring them on the go because you're enjoying your time out of office, right? Out of the classroom. But the idea is that, first of all, you don't necessarily have to share Dyno with your substitute. So that's going to save you a lot of time and potentially them some confusion as well. Maybe not confusion, just extra things they don't necessarily need to worry about. So instead, you would just leave the substitute, instructions for how to run class like you would otherwise if you didn't have Dyno. And then you monitor yourself remotely, really just to get the class history data. When you're monitoring remotely, you can block, of course, you can enforce a blocking plan, but you really don't have to. Again, it's really just a class history data. And this is something that's really common. Again, I've seen teachers do it time and time again. So if you are available, even though you're out of the classroom, I totally recommend that first and foremost. My second recommendation is really similar, but it's not you, the teacher, who is out of the classroom that would be doing the monitoring. So the second option that is best is you have a co-teacher or maybe a tech coach or an admin at your school or district that can do the monitoring for you. So same thing, you don't necessarily have to share instructions with the co-teacher. You don't have to worry about sharing your login or changing a login later. You're just saying, hey, do what you need to do with the class, please follow these instructions. And then, hey, tech coach Tierra, I'm going to be out of the office later today at a dentist, but my Spanish class, would you mind just jumping in there, adding yourself as co-teacher and monitoring it for me? Again, at least so we can get the class history data recorded and I, the teacher, can take a look at it later. I really just need you to click start monitoring at, let's say, 1:00 p.m. I think that's fair, right? So those are my two recommendations. Just monitor, don't worry about blocking. And don't worry about the substitute doing anything else but focusing on your students in the class. The third option is the option to share with a substitute. Now, this is one where I recommend you get your tech coach or admin involved because yes, while you do have the ability to share your own personal Dyno login with them, I really don't recommend that, for security purposes. Yes, of course, you can always change your password later, right? Your password is based with your school email address. So in that sense, you can always and very quickly and easily reset it. It's just not something I recommend and I can't help it. It's a security thing, right? You just don't share passwords. So there is an option though, if you reach out to your tech coach or admin to have them create a more or less generic login to Dyno for your substitute teacher. And then either you or the tech coach or admin can also add that substitute teacher, that new generic, login for them as co-teacher to your existing class. So again, they can actually monitor themselves as substitute. This is totally an option. It's absolutely feasible. It's not that much extra work, right? You just need a tech coach or an admin. The main thing is you just have to, either instruct your substitute on how to use Dyno or maybe leave a quick printout on how to, just quick log in and start monitoring. But again, options 1 and 2 there are definitely what I recommend. Just monitor yourself remotely or get help with monitoring. Awesome. Next question about monitoring, or really, I guess, set of questions here is about monitoring individual students, just select students within a class. All great questions. And I guess to answer them first, I want to clarify to say that, Dyno doesn't currently support the ability to hide students. So I'm going to answer this question again, kind of twofold. So you do have two options here. If, of a class roster of 20 some students, you only want to monitor 1, 2, 3, right, et cetera. So let's see, oops. So sorry, getting lost in my own notes. Forgive me. Okay. So if you just want to monitor 1 or a few students, since you can't necessarily hide them from your roster, what you would do is just edit your roster before class. So again, let's say I know I only need to monitor Tierra right now because she was out of school yesterday because she was sick. So she just needs to make up some work or make up a test. Right, in this situation, I can simply edit my existing class roster so it only includes Tierra, right? So I would just remove all the other students. Or since it literally is only Tierra, it might be a little bit quicker for me to just create a new class that includes Tierra on the roster. Now, the second option, of course, assumes that this new feature, teacher created classes, is something that is enabled within your account. It is by default enabled, but if for some reason as a teacher you don't see that create new class button, that just means that the administrator within your account has disabled that for you and for other teachers. But again, at least you've got a couple options here. So let's walk through that first scenario. Let's say that maybe you, for the most part, you want to monitor all of the students that are on your roster, but you just need to remove a few. Well, in that situation, just editing your class roster is probably sufficient. And you can actually edit your roster during class. This is kind of a little known use of Dyno. Most teachers think you can only edit your roster, right, to add or remove students before class via that edit hyperlink that you see on your My Classes page. And that's what that video 1 is showing you. Well, video 2 is showing you that you can actually do the same thing during class. It's just not as obvious. What you're doing is pretending like you're troubleshooting really, and then going through and adding a student to your roster there. So pretty straightforward, but again, you do have that option. You just click can't find student, then search for the name of the student that you want to add to your roster, click to select their name, and so on. But again, of course, depending on how many students you really do need to monitor, creating a new class, if you have the ability, might just be that much easier. This is a new feature, as I mentioned already. We released it late last year. It can be disabled by your administrator. So again, if you don't see that create new class button, it just means that it's disabled for your account. Okay, let my video wrap up there to show you how you're creating a new class. And I will note that any class you create as a teacher is also one that you can archive. So if I just created this class because I really only needed to monitor Tierra for a test, I can just jump back in here to edit it later. And I see that red archive button, I would click that to go ahead then and archive it. Okay. So as we move on here to talk more about, monitoring questions that were submitted, the next question that we're going to talk about is actually very similar to this, in that we're talking about students on a class roster and potentially adding them to that class roster. So the question is, about automatically adding students. Some of my students don't populate when I access the site. Well, when I read this question, I think about troubleshooting. Because as a teacher assigned to a class, you should be able to monitor the device of any student that is enrolled on that class roster. So, and also to answer this, I want to clarify how students actually connect to Dyno. So my answer here, right, is assuming that you could monitor a student. So for some reason, they're not showing up in your monitoring session, but otherwise they should be because they're assigned to your class roster. They have Dyno installed and so on. So, likely you've monitored them previously. So if students are already on your roster and you just want to try to get them connected to your monitoring session, right, for some reason their thumbnails just aren't showing up, there are a few things that you can do. First and foremost, I always recommend restarting the device. I don't want to sound like a broken record here. I know that's a very common tech thing to say, but it is truly helpful. It resets the Wi-Fi connection for the device. It also makes sure the operating system, the cloud connector that's installed, everything is up to date. So again, just a good best practice to have students restart their device here and there. And I mean a full restart, right? Not just logging out and logging in again. That's, again, just a good best practice in general. But even after a restart, if for some reason you're still not seeing a student thumbnail appear in your monitoring session that you should be, I recommend running a Dyno health check. So the Dyno health check feature is fairly new. It's a few years old now, but it's our way of giving teachers the ability to quickly troubleshoot those common things that might prevent a student thumbnail from appearing in your monitoring session, like a poor internet connection, or the student is logged on to their device with the incorrect username, so on. Running a health check is pretty easy, but it certainly is ideal for situations where you're physically, in the room with your students trying to monitor. And here's how you do that. So first and foremost, you're going to see that the number of students in your monitoring session does not match the total number of students that are on your roster. And then you click that blue hyperlink, show students not monitored, which of course will show you the list of students that you're not monitoring, which you probably already know. But some of the students might be out sick, right? You might only need to monitor so many of them. And therefore you can click the check boxes next to the names of the students that you want to troubleshoot here. and you hit report selected. When you hit report selected, that blue button, you're going to get this 4-digit code. This 4-digit code, the health check code, this is what gets entered onto the student device. And as soon as you enter it, Dyno is going to tell you what you need to know. So it's going to tell you the issue that's occurring and also how to fix it. Now, when you're entering this 4-digit code on the student device, where you're entering it is going to differ a little bit depending on the type of device that you're troubleshooting. So overall, we're looking for the Dyno icon. The Dyno icon, when you see that on a student device, reminds you first and foremost that Dyno is actually installed on a student device. And of course, that's required for monitoring. So when you see that, that's a good sign, right? You know that Dyno's installed. That Dyno icon is what you're going to click on the student's device to enter this 4-digit code. So me as a teacher, I take a quick mental note, or maybe I just jot this down on a Post-it. I walk over to Tierra's device, I pull up the Dyno icon, and I enter in this 4-digit code there. Now, if Tierra were using a Chromebook, that means that I'm looking for this extension to enter my 4-digit code. Excuse me, I'm looking for the icon to enter my 4-digit code as an extension, because that's how Dyno appears on Chromebooks. For Windows and Mac students, I'm looking for that Dyno icon to enter the 4-digit code in their system tray. For Windows users, it's usually the lower right-hand corner. For Mac users, it's usually the upper right-hand corner. But again, I click on that icon, I click something not working, and I enter this 4-digit code. From there, the health check code is going to tell me exactly what to do. It really isn't that complicated. Generate the code, enter it on the student device, follow the instructions of what it says. And depending on the health check results that are displayed, you might be given the option to notify your administrator, and if so, the health check will send a notification to your school's established point of contact, which is the tech coach role, within, for your school within potentially a district. If there is no tech coach role assigned, it would automatically go to an administrator of your account. All right, next question, we're monitoring. This one is actually one I received recently as well via Dino support, and it's about media controls. And the question here is a little bit specific to Chromebook students, but what she's asking here is basically, can I monitor media controls, right? And media controls, in other words, is like picture-in-picture. So let me give you a visual here. When I say picture-in-picture or media controls, right, what I'm referring to is a user's way of continuing to watch a video on their device, whether it's a YouTube video or whatever. In this example, it's a cute puppy video from YouTube. As a student's way of watching that video in a pop-up window while they continue to work on something else in class. So, depending on the device type, you may or may not be able to see that as a teacher using Dyno, but I'll break down how and why. So again, each operating system that we support is different. Some have advantages in some ways, disadvantages in others. But if you want to monitor picture-in-picture, right, so that floating window, that floating video, it does depend on the student device type. If you're monitoring students using Chromebooks, unfortunately, you're simply not going to be able to see that pinned window. It's called media controls. It's a pinned thing. So if you're searching about this on the internet, this terminology is a little bit unique to Chromebooks. Again, pinned media controls. You will not, unfortunately, be able to monitor or block it while you're using Dyno. However, there is an upside. If one of those tabs is playing music or audio in some way, you will see an audio icon appear on that tab when you're viewing the particular student's Chromebook in big view. So for Windows and Macs, it is a little bit better. Chromebook operating system just didn't give us this ability, sadly. But on Windows devices, at least, Dyno will report the picture-in-picture as the current activity within the activity tracker, right? So regardless really of what the active browser tab is, that it might look like they're, quote unquote working on, but they're actually just watching this video, Dyno is going to report it as picture-in-picture. So Windows devices, you can monitor it, you can block it, great, super easy. On Mac devices, we're somewhere in between. So with picture-in-picture for Mac devices, you're going to be able to see the picture-in-picture on a thumbnail, right? Just like this, this slide that we were looking at previously. So this is our Mac device. So on a thumbnail, you're going to be able to see it. Unfortunately, Dyno is not going to be able to report it because, again, just the way the Mac operating system is, but at least you'll be able to see it. Since you cannot necessarily report on it as the current activity, that also means that you cannot block it, but at least you can see it. So hopefully that answers your question thoroughly enough. If there are any other questions about picture-in-picture monitoring, please reach out. I'm happy to, discuss this topic further with anyone. Okay, cool. Next up, what's our next question? Well, perfect segue, talking about videos. The next question is about audio. And this one is about, students having access to audio settings. So for example, if a teacher is using an allow-only plan, how or what would I also need to allow to give students access to audio so that they can adjust those settings? Well, again, the answer here definitely depends on the student device type, but it also just kind of depends on what application the audio might be coming from. So to first answer this question holistically, I will say that no matter how restrictive your allow only blocking plan is, a student will always be able to, press on their keyboard, the device, like the volume up or volume down buttons. Let me repeat that since I stumbled. Even if you're enforcing a super restrictive allow only blocking plan, students can still adjust their volume by increasing it up or down on their keyboard. So that's always available, which is a good thing. Or maybe a bad thing, I guess, depending on your opinion. But if you break it down by device type, what you can actually block or allow, again, just depends. For Chromebooks, the settings for audio don't appear as a separate application, so it's not something that we can block. But again, you do have the ability to see every single browser tab that's open, so you would also see any browser tabs that were playing audio, and then could engage the student or close the tab from there if needed. For Windows and Mac devices, you can block or allow audio settings. And the way you do that is by searching for the term system preferences in that applications field within a blocking plan. But again, you should also consider other applications that can play audio. Just because you allow access to audio settings doesn't necessarily mean you're enabling audio for everything. If you're not allowing access to audio, but you're allowing access to YouTube, they might be able to hear audio, but doesn't mean they can adjust it. So again, just keep in mind where the audio is coming from, what that source is, because that will be relevant as well for what you're allowing or blocking. This one, again, just like the previous one, it can also be just really situational. So if you have further questions on it or just want to talk about your particular example, your situation, just let me know. Okay. So we're sort of wrapping up our monitoring questions here and are going to talk now more about blocking. This next question is best practices for blocking games. This one's a pretty easy one for me to answer, honestly. Bundles. That's my answer. Use our bundles. These are something really new that we've been working on. And when I say we, I mean our product development team. A bundle is just that. It's like items, right? So in terms of Dyno blocking plans, a bundle is something that you could either allow or block that group of like websites or applications. So for games, I suggest using the common distractions bundle, which is the second one I've got listed here. It's ideal for block-only blocking plans, and it includes over 300 of the most distracting websites and applications out there. So it does include both. Of course, social media, streaming services, music, things like that, but most importantly, games. And when I say the most distracting, I mean our product development team scoured all kinds of Dyno accounts and blocking plans to see what the most highly or most commonly blocked things were, students most commonly accessed games, music, networks, etc. So definitely use the bundles. My next slide here does show a video, that quick example of how you would add the common distractions bundle to a blocking plan. Again, because it includes both websites and applications, it really doesn't matter which field you're entering it into when you enter it into a block-only blocking plan, because it will automatically populate in both. And again, it's called common distractions. It includes just that, common distractions. So a really, really, really easy way for you to begin blocking all kinds of games, again, quickly and easily for your students. You'll also notice, I think this video jumps back into it, but there is a black drop-down arrow next to that phrase, common distractions. So you can click on that to open up the list and literally scroll through every single one of those 300 plus common distractions, so you know exactly what's included. I recommend Control F on your keyboard if you're looking for something specific. Oh, here we go. And my video is about to show you just that. I'm expanding all of these to, again, show you everything that's included, so you know exactly what you might be blocking. That was an easy one. Easy way to block games, common distractions, bundle. This next question is a bit generic, but it's a good one. I'm glad it was asked. The question is, where can I go as a teacher to find everything that Dyno has to offer? Again, this one for me is pretty easy because I've got two answer options here, but really the main answer is Dyno.me. Dyno.me is our portal. That's where you as a teacher log in. That's where you can get to every single thing that Dyno has to offer our teacher users. Specifically, when you log into Dyno.me, you're taken to your My Classes dashboard, right? And this is like my first half of the answer. So within Dyno.me, which is the place where you would find all the features that Dyno has to offer, the My Classes page is really the first of those two places you would utilize all the features here. So your My Classes page is your dashboard. From here, you can review your current class assignments, previous class assignments, start monitoring, create a new class, edit classes, uncombine classes, combine them, archive them, access additional features like blocking plans, questions, your class history, and so on. Oh, which of course I point out here. I think I did this last time. I'm so excited I talk about it before I show my arrows, all the things that you can do here from the My Classes page. And then the second thing you can do, of course, from your My Classes page, you could start monitoring, right? But the second, second place within Dyno where you can literally utilize almost all of our features, everything we have to offer, is the actual monitoring session, right? So when you're monitoring, you've got the thumbnails, you can get a closer look at student activity, you've got a tally and a list of all their activity. You can also block their activity, and of course, engage with them by checking their understanding, asking questions, and so on and so forth, right? There is Dyno.me for getting to everything, but specifically the My Classes page and a monitoring session are where you will go and use Dyno day in and day out and still be able to utilize almost every single feature that we have to offer for teachers. And again, one of the best parts, in my opinion, is with this monitoring session, right? You don't necessarily have to do all these things. Dyno does have a lot of features to offer, but we really try to keep it simple. Again, so you can use monitoring very passively because you've got peace of mind knowing that our class history feature is collecting all of that student activity data during your monitoring session and making it available to you after the fact. It is that paper trail. Okay. The next question is similar for me because we just talked about, where do I go to find all the features, right? Well, and I said Dyno.me, I said the My Classes page, a monitoring session. But it's a simple answer, right? We do try to keep Dyno very feature simple. So I think about that when I think about answering this next question. How does Dyno help you the most? Well, this really depends, I guess, on what your expectations are or what your goals are for a class. I'm also not a teacher, so I think Dyno helps you in a lot of different ways. But to help me answer that, right? Because I'm not a teacher, I looked to our power users, right? Reviews that were given online, things that people talk most about, that they're using the most. What are our Google Analytics saying? And I did narrow it down to help me answer this question. But again, I think that part of it too is just that we're feature simple. So how does it help you the most? It's easy to use. That's the answer. Where can you go to utilize all the features? Exactly one place, Dyno.me. So here's a little bit more about how Dyno helps our power users the most. So I can't speak as a teacher, but I can certainly share some of their stories. Probably the biggest benefit of Dyno is real-time visibility. That's how Dyno helps teachers the most. It gives them peace of mind, right? It gives them the ability to see what students are doing regardless of physical location. And it's easy to use, it's feature simple, so they don't hopefully waste class time getting up and running, using it, and so on and so forth. Big view within a monitoring session is one of our most popular features for a reason. Teachers just want to see what students are doing. And, Big View can also be used just like for tracking student progress, or maybe you're helping them troubleshoot like a new software you're trying out. Getting a look at that student thumbnail in Big View is so helpful. Another way Dyno helps teachers the most is with blocking. It helps teachers set those expectations about on-task versus off-task activity for class. But blocking plans are also flexible in that, teachers don't necessarily have to block all students if they don't need to. But hopefully those blocking plans give them the confidence that they need, that students do stay on task. So teachers don't constantly have to actually tell the students to be. And in fact, teachers can get up, walk around the room if they need to, and engage with their students, because the students are what's most important, right? Now, another way students help teachers, or Dyno helps teachers the most, is our send a message feature. And specifically within the send a message feature, you can push out a URL to students. So of course, you're literally getting them all on the same page, but it's also just a really, really beneficial feature for private messaging. Whether you just want to avoid embarrassing a student, or they're too shy to, speak up and ask a question themselves. That send a message feature is really great for teachers to guide students through something they might be stuck on, or again, just engage with them to help them get a better understanding of something you're presenting in class or a new software you're working through, and so on and so forth. Our next question, getting more into the strategy here, is about using Dyno in terms of building students' self-confidence. Well, Dyno offers a few tools that can help you do this. When I think about building self-confidence, I think about probably the most obvious, easiest way to do that. And that's to deliver praise, right? To acknowledge student accomplishments, whether they're individual or for the class as a whole. And again, our send a message feature allows you to do just that really, really, really easily. You can send a message to one student, multiple students, the entire class. But the idea is that you're making it a point, to praise, to acknowledge the good work when something is done correctly, both directly to the student in private, but also maybe sometimes, in front of their peers. Hey, everyone, check out what a great job Tierra did. Let's all try to be, as awesome about community service as Tierra is. And also it's easy sometimes just to focus on the negative aspects, right? You might it's easier to discipline because, right, someone did something wrong, so you correct them. But students that don't have a lot of confidence can easily focus on the negative. So that's why positive reinforcement, the acknowledging of these accomplishments, is so important. Delivering that praise with a send a message feature acknowledges those really quick, short, even small wins for students. It can just make a huge difference. The next one here is, in terms of building students' confidence, one way to do that is increase their sense of ownership, right? Get their feedback, ask them questions. To do that, use our ask a question feature, use our check for understanding feature. One way to, give self-confidence through this sense of ownership is helping students make their own decisions, right? Involve them in lesson planning. Giving them the choice over this or that involves them in their learning, and again, helps build that sense of ownership. So asking them questions about topics that they might want to explore during their next project. Again, giving them a choice is usually more exciting and more open than you must do this, right? You must complete this homework assignment. Gives the student potentially a sense of control. I get to choose what I'm doing versus just being told that I have to do it. Let's see. Another thing too, in terms of building student self-confidence in Dyno, this is kind of similar to that acknowledging accomplishments one. You're embracing growth. So this is you as a teacher, recognizing that, hey, we're all human, right? We're not perfect. We grow by making mistakes. So Dyno's class history feature is really going to help you here. No student is perfect. No adult is perfect. Mistakes are inevitable, right? So help build confidence by acknowledging failure, acknowledging mistakes, but remind students that this isn't permanent, right? They're not defined by this. The opposite, right? It's going to help them grow. It's going to help them get better. And the class history data can help you see that and help you show students that because of the ability to show trends, right? You show a student maybe where they were at the beginning of the year, right? Where they spent their time, how many distractions defeated on their device. And you compare that month to the latest month, right? The end of the year, and show them how far they've come with digital citizenship, right? Again, reaffirming this growth mindset, the idea that we're constantly changing and improving, even us as adults, even you as a teacher, is really, really powerful, right? Not yet. We're not there yet. None of us are there yet. We're all constantly in scholar mode, absorbing, learning, and changing, and inspiring each other as well. Now, I do recognize too, we're getting a little bit close to time. So I am going to quickly browse over these next few videos, which show you, the how-to of what I just talked about, because I have confidence that I know you can look at these later. You will get access to this deck. So this first one here is just talking about using the send a message feature, right? Acknowledging accomplishments. We can easily send an unlocked message. The next one is our ask a questions feature, right? We're involving students in their learning. Student-centered learning, we're asking questions, we're engaging them, we're giving them control and hopefully a sense of ownership, which should both lead to building their self-confidence. The check understanding here, similar to the ask a question feature, can help get that control, engage students, build confidence. And then finally, that class history data is something that you should totally leverage for embracing growth, sharing progress, talking about it, not just with individual students, but talking about growth as a whole with your class. So much you can do with the class history data. I can't tell me how many times I've said, it's my favorite feature, it's so underused. Use it. There's so much you can learn from it about your students, about your classes, about your blocking plans, potentially even about your own teaching style. But it can be really, really powerful for opening up those lines of communication, again, with your students, for helping build self-confidence. Okay. Next question is little known uses. What are some little known uses of Dyno? Truthfully, I had a hard time answering this one because I live and breathe this product, right? It's my job. I know it in and out. So nothing's little known to me. And on the other hand, right, I think Dyno is very feature simple. We certainly try really, really hard to keep it that way. We want it to be easy to use because we want you to use it and we want you to enjoy and benefit from Dyno. So to help me answer this question, I, again, went back to our users. I looked for help. And I looked for specifically support type questions. What are we getting asked the most about? I thought that would help me think about, again, little known uses. If people are asking about something, surely that means they don't know about it. They need to know more. It's potentially something that's not as well known as it could or should be. Well, my first answer here about a little known use is bundles. And this is something we've talked about already, so I don't want to, drill too far into it. But bundles are little known, I think, because they're new. And anything new is just slow to adopt sometimes, depending on your personality type. But the idea here is that Dyno is focused on blocking plan enhancements. Bundles are something new that we're introducing. We will make more in the future, and we're also going to introduce some more modular blocking plan enhancements over the next few months. So keep an eye out for those. So bundles are new, but there are more to come. And that can be really, really, really impactful for quickly creating a blocking plan. Another little known use is, I think, in terms of segmented blocking plans. So it's pretty common that if a teacher wants to enforce blocking on, two different blocking plans at once, segmented blocking makes sense, right? Because I know I want group A to be under this blocking plan and group B to be under this blocking plan. It's a little bit more intuitive. But what isn't as intuitive is that segmented blocking plans are also your way of just blocking a few students at a time, right? So you're technically still segmenting them into those two groups, but only one of the two groups actually has blocking associated with it. And this makes segmented blocking perfect for testing days. So all of your students start in group one under a very, very, very restrictive blocking plan. But then as some students finish testing before others, they simply raise their hand, let you know. You can verify that on your end. Okay, yep, great, Tierra's finished. I saw her test was submitted. So then I moved Tierra to group two, which is either a less restrictive blocking plan or it's free for all. So in other words, Tierra can be productive now for the rest of the class period without jeopardizing the testing integrity that is going on still for students in group one, right? That's what's most important, the testing. So a couple things you can do with segmented blocking. Again, it's more obvious that you can enforce 2 blocking plans at once with segmented blocking, but a lesser known use is that you can also just block 1 or maybe a couple students with segmented blocking as well. It doesn't have to truly be 2 blocking plans. It's more important that it's 2 groups. Now, the final little known use I want to talk about is using our send a message feature to push out a URL. This one I put here as a little known use because I think it's not obvious sometimes that you push out a URL by sending a message, right? They're different words, different terminology. I think they can just be open to interpretation. So we do get questions on this here and there in Dyno support. Hey, I want to make sure I send all of my students to this page because I want to talk about it, right? Well, how do I do that? Well, you use the send a message feature. So when you're sending a message and you want to push out a URL, that is, you want to open up a new tab on every student's device with the URL that you just sent opening up, you're entering a custom message. So really, you just copy and paste the URL into that text field that is the custom message field. And when you hit send, it will open on students' devices. So of course, a great way just to literally get students on the same page, but also helpful for just really long and crazy URLs that are difficult to type in or could easily be subject to typos. Also for really younger students, right, that just might be new to typing and just slower to enter things in. The send a message feature when you're pushing out a URL is really, really, really impactful for, again, many a reason. In addition, of course, to keeping students, focused and on task. Again, I want to be conscious of time. This is a video, a how-to about something I just talked about blocking just one or individual students with segmented blocking. I'm not going to let it play in its entirety because we are getting a little pressed for time. And here is the how-to as well for pushing out a URL to students. I know y'all can review these later. Our next question is, again, similar to the previous one in that we're talking about student engagement. This question specifically is about, using Dyno to promote that student engagement and foster robust relationships between the educator and the student. I feel like I'm a broken record at this point. What's a great way to promote student engagement? All the features that we've been talking about this whole time. Check for understanding, ask a question, send a message. There's no need for me to talk too much about them, right? The point is, they are Dyno's way of connecting you, the teacher, to the student for whatever the reason is. Promote engagement, keep them on task, build self-confidence, right? The questions that you've been asking me are basically the examples, all of the different ways that you can use these exact same features. They're incredibly valuable. Now, you can also use class history data to promote engagement and to foster those relationships too. So I kind of already teased this out through some of the other answers, that I've talked about here. Class history, of course, my favorite feature, is your way of not just showing student progress, not just praising, using it to praise work, but you can learn more about your students, and that can help you foster the relationship because you simply know more about them, right? You can find things in common. In general, it's just opening up that line of communication. So no matter which route you take, if you're using the class history data to talk with your students about their interests, about their grades, about their digital citizenship, no matter what it may be, this data is so powerful. It's hard to argue with data, right? And you're giving students the benefit of the doubt that they don't necessarily realize how much time they might be on YouTube during a given class period, right? They don't necessarily have that iPhone app that says, hey, your screen time was up 41% this week on YouTube, right? So definitely use this data again to help you open up lines of communication and therefore help you build relationships with your students. So we are now completely into the admin side of today's Lunch and Learn, talking about admin strategy, settings, and management. This first one is more of a troubleshooting one. Hey, as an admin, why can't I access all the classes that my teachers have created? And the answer is, well, you should be able to. So remember that tech coaches and admins have access to Dyno admin settings, but tech coaches can only edit users and classes for their assigned school or schools. Administrative users can add or edit classes and users for any within the district, anything within their Dyno account. So the school assignment for admins doesn't matter. For tech coaches, it does. So if you're an administrator, you can edit any class within your district, within your account. You can add yourself as a co-teacher as well to monitor any of those. And then, to answer this question, you can review any other classes, whether you created them or not. So to this question, right, the admin says, hey, I can't access them. Well, I want to switch to this video to help answer it. My next slide. As an administrator, when you click on that gear icon in the upper right-hand corner, you're taken to the admin settings. Again, the same applies for tech coaches. Tabs, they don't have all the tabs that the admin sees. But either a tech coach or an administrator would simply go here to the classes tab within the admin settings, find the class in question, and then add themselves as a teacher of the class. When you're doing that, that means this particular class is now going to show up on your dashboard as well, and therefore you can monitor it.
Hey, Casey. Sorry, your microphone kind of went weird. You kind of sound like an Android right now. Yeah, now I can't really hear you at all.
How about now?
That's better.
Okay. Sorry, folks.
No worries.
And thank you, Tara, for interrupting me. So again, for this particular question, I've answered like the technical how-to you would need to do these things, but based on the nature of the question being very troubleshooting-esque, I would encourage this user to reach out to us if I didn't fully answer it, or maybe if for some reason you feel like, you can't see the same things that I'm showing you, you should be seeing, so on and so forth. Our next admin related question is about managing Dyno. A little bit generic here, but that's okay. How, as a tech person, can I help manage Dyno? Well, I would start out by saying that, you have to make sure your teachers are set up for success. So what that means is just make sure Dyno is available in every which way. Make sure the cloud connector is installed on each student device that should be monitored. It does update automatically, so once it's installed, you shouldn't need to do any maintenance. And then make sure there aren't any errors in the import manager, because if there are errors, the data associated with those errors won't import into Dyno. So again, those first two bullet points are just about making sure teachers can be set up for success, so you don't have to do much to manage Dyno. And then finally, review the monitoring data that teachers are generating. Doing that will help support them better in terms of if they're looking for specific data or need help with blocking plans and so on and so forth. When you have a better understanding of how they're using it, again, you can help them use it better, use it differently, encourage usage overall, and so on and so forth. Similarly, our next question is about encouraging users to take advantage of the Dyno dashboard. Now, my answer to this question is kind of depend on what your definition of dashboard is, but I'm going to answer this in terms of taking advantage of Dyno in general, whether it's one particular feature or not. I think overall my answer here is gonna be the same. Whether it's your My Classes page, that dashboard, whether it's your class history data dashboard, whether it's your monitoring dashboard, right? If you are a tech coach, if you're an administrator, and you are working with teachers to use Dyno, realistically, there's not anything you can technically do to make someone do anything else, right? That's just the way it is. I'm raising my first child right now and realizing that very quickly, right? If you want someone to do something, the best thing you can do is do it yourself, right? Lead by example, set expectations, and remind them to use it. Again, just do the things that you would do. So again, encouraging usage is easy when there are no errors, right? When the teacher has all of her data there, and there's nothing otherwise in terms of install or setup that's preventing her from using it. That's huge. Just having that minimum foundation of a correct environment set up helps encourage usage in and of itself. And then again, reviewing the monitoring data that teachers are generating is going to help you understand how they're using it. And then you can share it with teachers too. So not just evaluate it, but share it with them. Maybe you can share with teacher A how teacher B is using it to give her an idea, right? Encourage professional development in that way. And similarly, share Dyno content. If you want to encourage teachers to use Dyno, talk about it, share best practices, share stories, share successes, even new features. Anytime a new feature comes out, we're emailing administrators and tech coaches. But there's also a product notification, so any teacher should be able to see anytime a new feature comes up. Well, it doesn't hurt to remind them though. Again, new features can sometimes be slow to adopt. So let's say a new feature comes out. Well, you might set a reminder for yourself next month to ping teachers about it and say, hey, how is everyone enjoying Dyno's new common distractions bundle? Have you tried it yet? If so, let me know how great it's working so I can share it with others. Or, hey, I personally, as a tech coach, have tried Dyno's new common distractions bundle. It is friggin' awesome. Like, I totally recommend you use it. Here's how you do it. I lead by example. I share stories and the impact that it can make, the potential, the opportunity that these features can provide. And that's how I encourage teacher usage. Again, I talk about it, I set expectations, and I lead by example. Very similar here is my next question, not just encouraging use of Dyno, but encouraging responsible use. So we're going to take it a step further. Again, we're leading here by example. We're setting expectations. But there are a few other things that you can actually do within the Dyno product to make sure that teacher usage, no matter when or how you're encouraging it, is safe, is focused on education and is according to the expectations that you have set for your teachers. And those features are here outlined. So we've got blackout settings, right? Those are an admin's way of preventing teachers from monitoring just anytime they want, on Sunday or Saturday, outside of school hours. There are also IP restrictions, which aren't very common anymore, unfortunately, thanks to the pandemic and the, increase of asynchronous classrooms. But there are IP restrictions that you can set up if you need to prevent teachers from monitoring students that are not on campus. You can also disable teacher-created classes. I mentioned this towards the beginning of the presentation. So if for some reason you do not want your teachers monitoring classes that they have not created themselves, disabling teacher-created classes is the way to go. And then finally, as an administrator, you can create school-wide blocking plans. School-wide blocking plans are really district-wide, they're account-wide in Dyno. So that means if I create it as an administrator, any teachers within my account can access it and use it in their class. So again, that's like my way of leading by example. Hey, if you don't maybe want to build a blocking plan, check out mine. Don't worry. That encourages usage, making it easy on them, doing it for them. Because again, you can't control them. So you'll just do everything else you can to promote Dyno and encourage them to use it, explain the benefits of Dyno. Okay. I am now officially wrapping up. Just a reminder, Dyno support is here. My team is here. As Tierra mentioned, we had so many questions come in. This is probably officially the longest lunch and learn ever. And I feel like I am flying through my answers. So because we've had so many questions, right, that's great, but it also leads me to believe you're not asking us enough questions. So my personal ask of you all, anyone that's joining us here, is please reach out. If you've got questions like these all the time, just ask them when they come up. Dyno support is here to help you via phone, via email, via chat within the product. Just let us know. Questions, issues, feedback, we want to hear from you. So thank you again for joining us, for your patience through this long session. I will officially hand over the mic back to Tierra.
Thank you, Casey. That was a great session and some really great answers to a lot of questions. I am thrilled with how many questions we were able to answer between this session and our winter lunch and learn. We had one question come in through the Q&A during your session that I want to get to, and then we'll wrap it up for everyone and let you all have a great weekend. We had a question come in from Kathy, and it was in relation to, I believe, your second answer. And she was asking if you delete, and this was in relation to monitoring individual students. So she asked, if you delete students from your roster to only monitor one student, how do I get get the other students back on the roster when I need to monitor all of them again?
Really great question, Kathy. A couple different ways. First of all, you can just edit your class roster again and manually add them all back. That's a very manual way to do it. And that probably is what you would need to do if you were making those edits in the same day. So like first you just needed to monitor that one student, but then you really had the class of all the students later. Yeah, that's probably what you're going to have to do. But if you have the benefit of being able to wait overnight, like you monitor just that one student, but the next day you can wait at least till the next day to monitor the whole class. It is very likely almost every single Dyno account for the most part is set up to import SIS data daily. So that means if you're lucky enough to be able to wait overnight, the Dyno roster will reset for you so you won't have to do a thing. Kathy, really, really great question. I'm really glad you answered that and that I could clarify that for others. And this is something that we'll tell teachers too when they reach out to us on Dyno support. And they'll say, hey, I'm missing student Tierra for my roster. What do I do? And we as a support team say, hey, no worries. You can edit your roster at any time to add Tierra to it so that you can monitor it. But please keep in mind that it's very likely that your roster will reset overnight. So if you need Tierra to be on that roster tomorrow, you're either going to need to add her again tomorrow, or you're just, better yet, going to check in with your administrator to make sure that Tierra's, that roster edit for Tierra is made in my SIS and in that importing data into Dyno. So again, it's just automatically pulling, and no matter what I do to my roster, therefore Tierra is going to come in. Again,
Great
thank you,
answer.
Kathy.
Yeah, great question. Clarifying that. That was the only question that we had come in through the Q&A, and I know we've already answered a lot of questions in this session. So I think we'll wrap it up here. For everyone attending, thank you again for joining us. As always, you will receive the link to watch this recording. And if you registered ahead of time and weren't able to join us, you will also receive the recording. If anyone needs a certificate of attendance to receive PD credit for this session, please just respond to that email and I will be happy to provide you with that. Last thing before I let you all go is we do have our Dyno user community. So if you go to this bit.ly link, it's just bit.ly/usercomm. You can join that there and join our Facebook group to become a community member and provide direct product feedback to our product team and really have a direct say in the future of Dyno and product developments that happen. So that's an exciting thing that we have going on this year. Other than that, thank you all again for joining us. I hope you have a wonderful weekend and keep an eye out. We will be announcing our February Lunch and Learn very shortly. It'll be taking place at the end of February. So keep an eye out for that. And we will see you there. Angela just asked which email to respond to. Angela, that would be the email with the session recording that you'll receive later today. So if you need a certificate, just respond to that one asking, and I will be happy to provide that to you. Thank you all again, and we will see you in February.